Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. Are you sick and tired of hearing about coronavirus? Nothing new seems to come up. Well, I got some corona news, only because I think maybe there's some stuff you're not paying attention to, or maybe you didn't hear it. In Seattle, 31 people have died from coronavirus. Seattle is the hardest hit city in the United States so far. Turns out doctors suspected that the virus was more widespread than previously thought as early as late January. But they say state and federal government officials prevented them from testing samples for coronavirus. Why? Well, there's a story behind it. Dr. Helen Chu, an infectious disease expert in Seattle, found out about the first American coronavirus case in late January. It spurred all sorts of questions about how widespread the virus might already be in that area. Chu was on a team that had been conducting flu research, so they had a lot of samples from patients in the area who had exhibited flu symptoms. They wanted to repurpose those samples for coronavirus testing. But they needed government approval. And that's where they hit the wall. This from the New York Times. To repurpose the tests for monitoring the coronavirus, they had to get the support of state and federal officials. But nearly everywhere Dr. Chu turned, officials repeatedly rejected the ideas. Interviews and emails demonstrate how all this worked. Even as weeks crawled by and outbreaks emerged in countries outside of China where the infection had begun. Government officials were concerned that the doctors wanted to run coronavirus tests on patient samples without patient consent. Also, the lab was not certified for clinical work. But the doctors believed an emergency situation called for greater flexibility. The powers that be were looking over their shoulder, apparently, and thinking of court cases. We're a litigious bunch. So by late February, Chu and her team decided to ignore the government's restrictions and begin to conduct the coronavirus testing anyway. They quickly found more positive tests. Cho wrote, it must have been here this entire time. It's just everywhere already. The cost of lost time in these days, several Washington state residents would die from coronavirus. The death toll in the state now stands at 31. Had the government entities gotten out of the way, perhaps those people could have survived it. JerusalemNewsSystem.org, Melanie Phillips, British journalist, broadcaster, and author, writes, this week 2 Americans and 1 British soldier were killed after a military camp hosting U.S. and U.K. troops in Iraq was hit by a rocket attack. A news item's listed among so many others here in America. No one has claimed responsibility, but the most plausible suspect is Iran. But if this is so, observers believe it suggests the regime really is panicking. For when such fanatics feel cornered, they're likely to lash out on the basis that if they're going down, they might as well take down with them the enemies they believe it is their divine mission to destroy, and that's us. Perhaps that's also why it's not fanciful to suggest that the coronavirus is a blessing they wish to enhance. The microbe might just achieve what humankind has failed to do and seal the fate of the regime itself. With the pandemic predicted to reach its peak around Passover, the coronavirus may thus lay claim to becoming the 11th plague. This is a reference to the 10 plagues in Egypt in the days of Moses. You got to have a Bible and know something about the Bible to understand that. Might be good to read. Recently, Dr. Rafij, I can't pronounce it, who is president of the International American Council on the Middle East, reported that Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei recently called the virus a blessing. The reality here is that after China, Iran has quietly become the second global hub of this disease. So far, even according to doctored official figures, at least 9,000 have been diagnosed with the virus and 429 have died. Unofficial estimates suggest a figure of 1 million or more who have been affected, with thousands of deaths. Until a few days ago, attention in the United States was focused on whether the Democrats could find a plausible candidate to beat President Trump. Now Trump's main political opponent seems to be the coronavirus. According to the Daily Caller, senior White House officials say that during negotiations with the Trump administration regarding a coronavirus economic relief package, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi sought to include a loophole that would guarantee federal funding for abortion services. Now, what does abortion have to do with coronavirus? Well, it's politics in the U.S. Yeah, you guys want this? We'll put this in here. We'll get what we want. Well, the Republicans quickly squashed the idea. Iran has not only failed to contain the spread of the disease, but seems to have made virtually no attempt to do so. It still has no plans to quarantine the city of Qom, the principal shrine of Iranian Shia religious devotion, and the epicenter of the Iranian outbreak from where the virus has massively spread. The regime also hasn't halted flights from Iran to other countries, and it has failed to provide testing for its citizens across the country. At least one Iranian commentator has suggested that the regime is doing this deliberately, pointing out that Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei recently called the virus, quote, a blessing, end of quote. Dr. Rafizadeh, I can't pronounce it still, president of the International American Council on the Middle East, wrote on the Gatestone Institute website, quote, are the ruling mullahs attempting purposefully to spread the coronavirus to other countries as a form of global jihad? On the home front, according to the Daily Caller, senior White House officials say that during negotiations with the Trump administration regarding a coronavirus economic relief package, that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tried to include a loophole that would guarantee federal funding for abortion services. The officials claimed a California Democrat attempted to lobby for a number of these provisions, all of which slowed down the bipartisan working group. This according to Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. Among Pelosi's demand, according to the Daily Caller, was $1 billion to reimburse laboratory claims. White House officials told the publication that if approved, this would create a precedent of health spending that circumvents a federal ban on taxpayer-sponsored abortions, a virtual slush fund for abortions. The ban, known as the Hyde Amendment, does not allow clinics or medical centers that perform abortion services to receive federal dollars. You do know that just about every abortion center has been shut down over that. We talked last week about one that does about 10,000 of these. I want to say every month. I don't know if it's every year, but a huge number. But after that, there's very few. Children are being born. How's that grab you?